Thanks for tuning in to Stay Sharp with Razorleaf, your secret weapon for all things digital and manufacturing. In this episode, our team invited Pat Hume, CEO of Canvas GFX, to talk about how digitalization is changing the way people work. Pat shared how this particular topic, changing the way people work, became her passion when she took on the CEO role at Canvas. She deeply cares about the teams working on the factory floor and is developing innovative solutions to improve the quality of information for the front line to help ease the workforce challenges in manufacturing. Join Jonathan, Jen, and Pat as they explored what the top workforce challenges are on the factory floor and how Canvas GFX is intent on helping manufacturing organizations overcome them. Let's tune in with the team.
Welcome back to Stay Sharp. This podcast is about all things digital related to products and manufacturing. We talk a lot about digital transformation and the advantages it offers, faster time to market, increased customer satisfaction, better traceability, et cetera, all the things. But what does that really mean as far as day-to-day operations go? What does it mean like on the shop floor in the manufacturing plant? So today we're going to talk about how digitalization is changing how people work. And with us today, actually, I should stop and introduce my colleague. Jonathan Scott is with me as always.
Hi, everybody.
Sorry about that, Jonathan.
No worries.
And I'd like to also welcome Pat Hume as our special guest today. Pat is the CEO of Canvas GFX. And Canvas is what Pat calls, I think I've heard you call it a re-startup. That is a company that goes back decades, but is taking a very new and different approach to interactive visual documentation. An approach that is both driven by and in response to our topic today. So Pat, can you tell our listeners a little bit about your background and Canvas, just to give everybody a bit of context for our discussion?
Yeah, sure, Jen. Thanks. And really a pleasure to be here. Hi, Jonathan. Nice to meet you. And I look forward to a great conversation today. So a little bit of background on me. 44 years in high tech. Started my career at IBM. After IBM, 20 years at IBM, actually. I did SAP, I did Avaya, so I did a lot of very large businesses, learned a lot about software, about the market, about, digital transformation, right? It was happening back in the 1980s, whether we realize that or not, that's the reality. So, we've come a long way. I did a couple microcap companies, a few startups, landed here at Canvas after my venture capital partners and I took a decision to invest in Canvas. So I have a small boutique venture capital firm called Wisdom LLP. Wisdom took a decision back in 2019 to invest in Canvas. We saw something that we felt very strongly would address the challenges that the manufacturing vertical was facing, and as such, decided to invest capital into Canvas to help fuel some growth. 3 months in, I was asked by the board to step in as CEO. I had fallen in love with the opportunity and the company, and it was really easy for me to say, yes, I would love to take this company forward and build it for its success. Canvas is, Jen, appropriately as you said, it's a re-startup. Yes, the technology had been in market for about 3 decades. We had built a nice book of business, but the market had changed. And so we had this legacy base of customers, but the market, technology, adoption, everything was changing. And so what we did at Canvas was we spun out of a parent company, we bought the assets, and we started to build what is Canvas GFX today. We were fortunate in that we had a deep appreciation for what was happening in the industry because of our legacy, our heritage, yeah? And we had a base of technology that still had broad applicability into the market. But it was time to make it into a platform, right? A SaaS business, right? And really move it forward. So we have built what we call the Connected Knowledge Platform. And what this does, it's an end-to-end cloud solution that allows manufacturers to create, collaborate, and consume interactive, digital, step-by-step, model-based instructional content. That's a big, long sentence.
It is.
That's a lot, right?
Big, long sentence. Yeah. But it's important that people appreciate and understand the power of the platform related to sort of a multimedia approach to the creation of information that the frontline workers need to do their job right the first time. Okay?
So Pat, let me come back to you on that. I just want to, for our listeners and our audience, and we have all sorts of folks listening, to just sort of restate that the way I heard it is it's technical illustrations, it's manufacturing work instructions, it's repair manuals, it's that kind of content, but in the new digital cloud-based world, right? Where we can leverage models, where we can leverage all this information that people have, the richness of what we have, but still get that right information to the right people at the right time in the right format. Am I hearing you right?
Yeah, Jonathan, you want a job?
No.
Nice.
Because you're spot on. And I would add one more dimension that we've worked on and recently launched to market in November, which is the concept of empowering the frontline worker. So we have built an ability to allow the frontline worker to feed back into the digital thread, thereby creating a digital loop. Example, I've got a defective part. The process isn't working. This design isn't efficient. Yeah. So empowering and respecting the knowledge that's sitting in the hands of that frontline worker. It's not just connecting the engineering knowledge to the worker, it's connecting the worker knowledge back, feeding it back.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
that's great. It's good closing the loop, and now I get the knowledge piece of what you're talking about.
Right.
That makes sense.
And our mantra is, we know quality is critical in manufacturing, right? We've spent through the pandemic, pre-pandemic, but even through the pandemic, we had an acute issue with supply chain, right? And it isn't gone yet, but the workforce challenge has sort of trumped the supply chain problem, right? But at the end of the day, quality is still a critical KPI for manufacturers. And our mantra is, look, if we can get the information into the hand of the worker to do the job right the first time, right? I improve quality. If I improve quality, I reduce scrap. If I reduce scrap, I need less, replacement parts from my supply chain, right? I can get product to market faster. I can reduce cost, right? And if I'm a frontline worker and I'm building something with quality, I'm proud. I feel good, right? Versus, oh my God, I failed again, and it's not really my fault.
Right.
Yeah. So we're all about connected knowledge, empowering the frontline worker, delivering high quality opportunity to manufacturing.
It's really that sort of digital last mile, right? Like we talk about with internet service providers, it's getting it to where that information needs to be, that the way that people need it. So yeah, I think what you're doing is great, right? And to your point, it's something that you've got a legacy. It's not like this is a brand new idea, but you had to adjust it for the reality of what we're dealing with today. So that makes sense.
And thank heavens for our partnership with Razorleaf, because one of the things our enterprise customers have told us is they want to preserve their workflows as they exist today. So integration into their PLM system, their MES system, their QMS systems, is pivotally important, which, our partnership with you has allowed us now to be able to provide an integration capability so that we're part of the existing workflows that are there, but augmenting the power of that enterprise software they've already purchased, right? So we augment that power together with you.
Right. Leveraging the digital that they have, right? Whatever that might be. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
That's actually, it brings up an interesting question I want to dive into about, data and digital and how that's really democratizing things, right? So, traditionally we've had data in systems and it's sort of locked up, and it feels like one of the things that you guys are doing is trying to free that data a bit. Those trends of making data more available and getting it out of the silos that it's in, How has that impacted you guys? I mean, do you see it as that's something customers are asking for, so we're an enabler for it, or we've had to fight hard to get that data out? Like, how does that play for you guys?
Yeah. So it's funny you said data democratization. In the early beginnings of Canvas GFX, the new company, we talked a lot about data democratization. And as we all know, your audience, people here in this call, the data is everywhere. PDM attempted to, democratize it. PLM attempted to democratize it. But because there's no standards, because, it's all disparate, it's not easy. So what we love about the concept of data democratization is we can bring in a PDF. We can bring in video. We can bring in photos. We can bring in 2D CAD drawings. We can bring in 3D CAD. Right? So in a single pane of glass, we can bring in these sources of truth, right? And commingle them so that the output is exactly what you said before, Jonathan. That is that slice of information that is comprehensive, but highly visual, right? And provided then to the frontline worker. Now, we have created SDKs, right? So initially, and let me be, if I, be honest, we started with, hey, let's hard code this. Let's give these guys this platform and be true to, here it is, out of the box, take it, you're gonna love it. And the enterprise said, we really need to customize. And our data is different than Joe's data, and et cetera, et cetera. So, in Release 5, what we've done is we've actually created a low-code platform, right, to allow people to customize how they want to access the data, right? Once that data is accessed, how they want to create the content that's required. And then on the consumption side, how do you want to consume it? Do you want to consume it in your MES? Do you want to have the ability to navigate that content? Do you want to feed back on that content? So all of this is now culminated to, I would call it a broad, bold first step at data democratization.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you're really contributing to that. I mean, you're obviously having to challenge some of those silos that existed to get the data you're talking about. But on top of that, you guys are really trying to contribute to that movement by saying, look, we want to make it, once we have that digital data, we want to make that accessible to the end users to sort of mix and remix as they need at the point of use.
You got it. 100%. Okay.
That's great. I think to me, that's a huge enabler for a lot of folks today who are trying to go through digital transformation, is putting the power in the people who need to use that digital data, right? I mean, that's how you succeed in transformation, I think, is enabling adoption. And you do that by getting close to the user, right? So you don't do it by saying, well, here's what you get.
Right, exactly. So, we just finished a deal with a company. Unfortunately, I can't name it because I don't have permission. But part of the process that they went through to determine whether or not they would purchase our platform, and I loved this. I was very, very excited by this. The VP said to me, look, Pat, we have one more hurdle. And I said, what is it? He said, we're going to put the documentation on the factory floor, and we're going to get feedback to see what the workers think. I said, Yahoo, that's exactly right. And I said to them, and you might think I'm crazy, but I said to them, look, if that feedback isn't what it should be, I won't sell you this product. Because it's not intended to be shelfware. It's intended to be deployed and used and bring value, immediate ROI to the company. Yeah, right? The good news was they came back and said, they could have called my bluff, right? Okay, Pat, well, we're not going to buy it. But they didn't. They came back and actually said, look, the guys loved it, right? Not only the workers, but the supervisors on the floor, right? Everybody was really pleased with the difference between that PDF, English-based, text-dense piece of paper that had coffee stains on it right? Versus this hip, cool, highly informative, interactive document that made sense to them, right?
So I'm curious, we've talked a lot about how you're getting the data and how it's flowing, et cetera. I wanted to go back to something that you said in the very beginning, as far as when you were getting started, talking about the challenges that the manufacturing vertical was facing. So can you tell us a little bit about, aside from like how things are flowing, give us some specifics around some of those challenges?
Yeah, that's great, Jen. Thank you. First and foremost is the workforce challenge, right? Pre-pandemic, the National Association of Manufacturers publishes lots of surveys, right? So we read those surveys because, good startups, to try to find product market fit, study the market. And pre-pandemic, the workforce challenge hit the top 10 list of problems, but it wasn't number one, right? Because supply chain was driving everybody cuckoo before pandemic, during pandemic. Post-pandemic, the number one problem has been the workforce. And I think you see it everywhere, right? The ability to hire and retain people, talent, is a problem. And we have a workforce shortage, a pretty significant workforce shortage in manufacturing, not only in the United States, where we have the stats because NAM publishes them, but worldwide, yeah? And our thesis is that with institutional knowledge leaving the business, we have to capture that institutional knowledge, right? And then we have to repurpose it and make it modern for the next generation, right? The next generation doesn't want PDF. They don't all speak English as their native language, right? So workforce challenge number one, Jen. Secondly, we had a thesis that digital transformation journey is not complete unless you digitally transform the knowledge that the frontline worker needs to do the job right the first time. And so putting the PDF in a SharePoint, saying we're digital. No, you're not. Okay. Right. Using PowerPoint as an engineering tool.
It's not digital?
No, I don't think it was designed for that, guys. Right. So, we looked at all the different things that are out there. And even, Jonathan, and you'll appreciate this, even the historic technical illustration tools, right, that are part of the big companies, the PTCs and the Dassaults, and I respect them tremendously because we integrate with those guys, yeah?
Right.
But those tools are no longer really applicable to the new workforce, yeah? So one of the things, Jen, that as we studied all of this, we started with the concept of ease of creation. So when you look at our user interface, it's a ribbon interface, it's context aware, super simple. Non-engineers can use this product. You don't need a degree. It's not like putting a CAD software on every desktop where they open up and go, what do I do with this? This is stupid simple, yeah? So, we started with that, but then as I've said before, the value is in the consumption more than the creation.
That's interesting. I want to dig into something you mentioned there when you brought up legacy, right? And the history of Canvas, as well as some of the legacy providers for tech illustration tools and things like that. How much penetration do you think that there is in the manufacturing world today, engineering, design, that whole space related to these tools? Because I feel like I still see lots of companies who are still using the legacy tools and screenshots from CAD and those kinds of things. What do you guys see?
100%, okay? Which is why we invested all the money we did in Canvas, because it's time for a change, right? Yes, the old legacy technical illustration documents are still there. Screenshots are still being asked for. PDF with 2D drawings, copies of copies of copies are still out there, right? And our thesis is, if you want to digitally transform, you have to move off those old tools into a new environment, just like you had to take a decision to move into a PLM or a PDM, or an MES. Don't work on spreadsheets anymore. Use an MES system, right? Our market messages: stop using archaic 30-year-old technical illustration tools and move to a connected knowledge platform that is end-to-end, multimedia, truly digital, visual, and addresses the needs of diversity and integrates in to all your enterprise software.
Yeah, I think that last piece really connects to what I hear in the market, so many people talking about today on digital thread, right? And you mentioned a loop earlier, right? So digital thread, digital tapestry, fabric, loop, whatever you want to call it, but that idea of connected data so that whatever asset you're using, whatever asset you're producing that you're taking to the front line is connected all the way back to the original asset.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So that change can flow, so that you know when something needs to be updated, so that the information, that knowledge can flow back the other direction. So yeah, I think I get to, in my mind anyway, I get the value proposition of what you guys are doing and what you see that people need to adopt, right? If they really want to be digital and transform, you have to get out of that model of disconnected, take a screenshot. I don't know where it came from. I couldn't reproduce it tomorrow if it changed. I don't know who to give feedback to that I need to change it. Like, get out of that model, right?
And then, Jonathan, I'd like to ask you a question. If you think about all of this, what's the impact to the quality? What is your,
right.
You understand what we've built. You've been in the industry over 20 years, right? This is your area. This is your zone of genius. So give me your feedback. What do you think about the impact we have to the quality that someone's trying to build into their product?
I think that's huge, right? I think the ability to get the feedback back into the product development is tremendous. And we talk about that with a lot of folks we work with, other partners in our ecosystem, as we talk about things outside of product development. But in the execution, in the service, in the downstream work, any way that you can get information back quickly and sort of lower that friction, lower those barriers to having that knowledge come back into product development is huge, right? I mean, there's tons of people talking about it today with IoT, right? And getting feedback from the field. Well, that's great. I love it when devices talk back and they give feedback to product development, but we've got some low-hanging fruit, just like you're talking about, with the frontline worker, the folks in manufacturing, the folks in field service, who can say, look, here's what broke, here's what I'm seeing, here's what doesn't work, this doesn't fit, we got an interference here. Those are the kinds of things that we need to get back in the hands of product developers, product designers, and even in some case, marketers, right? People who are trying to understand customer requirements. So I think it is. I think it's a big enabler, and I think it's great. This is the promise of fully digital, is enabling that kind of communication front and back.
Great, thank you for that, because that is the primary way we think about product market fit, right? It's that quality. And it's big Q quality, because of course the product's going to improve, yeah. But there's quality in the workforce. There's quality in how people feel about each other. There's quality, right?
So I had a quick question with, when you were both talking about getting it, down to the shop floor, et cetera. Are you running into, when you're going out there and bringing this to the industry as a whole, how ready do you feel people are for this? That's one of the biggest challenges we run into a lot, is organizational change. Engineers, and I say this only because I am one, right? Engineers are not known for their desire to change what's working, even if it's outdated.
Right.
I don't know how much of my career I spent trying to convince people to go from 2D to 3D. And 2D is still out there. Drawings are still out there. Like, how much of what you're doing right now is educating the workforce on how they can be doing something better? Or are they just dying for this?
That's a great question. So couple things to consider on that question. Number one, education is primary. People need to be educated, right? So you're going to see us start doing a lot more of educational content, right? Just to bring in awareness, create that, if it's not an obvious pain point, it's latent, bring that latent pain forward. Okay, that's number one. So education is important. I couldn't agree more. Change is difficult. So when you have a catalytic event, whether you want to change or not, you have to. And I think the workforce challenge is causing organizations to say, the old adage of don't fix it if it's not broken can't apply anymore. Okay, the men and women that want to stick to the 30-year-old tech illustration tools and the old way of doing things, they're leaving the business.
That is that generational turnover is a big thing.
Right. And if we don't have these new tools and these new ways of performing the work, they're not going to stay. They'll go somewhere else, right? So I think you're spot on the question. The second consideration is, who's the persona that buys this, right? And we created an ICP, an ideal customer profile, which says, look, if a company isn't interested and committed to digital transformation, operational excellence, quality improvement, right? And they're kind of stuck in the old ways, they don't meet our ICP, because there always are laggards.
Sure.
There's leaders and laggards, right?
Crossing the chasm.
And,
right?
Jeffrey Moore's crossing the chasm, right? The guys that cross the chasm are the guys we're going after, right? And then the laggards, some will never change. And then some will just drag their feet and be pulled across that chasm, kicking and screaming. But I'll tell you something, I had a call with the chairman of a very large company. And I have to be careful. I don't want to overstep my bounds with company names.
Sure, of course.
He took a call, and I loved the call because he said to me, Pat, I am losing my competitive advantage because of the workforce challenge. And I need new ways of thinking, new tools, new processes. I have to get better at getting my frontline workers, whether it's on the manufacturing floor or in field maintenance, repair, et cetera, enabled with the stuff you guys are doing, right? He said that people will not sit 2 weeks in a hydraulics class anymore. That's not the way this next generation learns. They refuse to do it. So what do I do, right? So Envision is also a training tool, as you can imagine. Create the work instruction and use the work instruction as the training material. So when Joe and Susie are being trained, they take that identical content to the floor, right? We have a very large customer that's doing on-the-job training by using the work instruction because it's visual. Here's the model. Put this on this, right? You can see it, right? So we don't have to sit in a 2-hour or 2-week hydraulics class.
Well, and that does tremendous things too, I imagine, for folks who the part of their workforce challenge is globalization, is language, is culture, all those things. It's like, well, can we somehow take that out of the equation, take those obstacles out of the equation? And I expect, what you're doing with reusing digital assets, looking at 3D, showing people things visually helps address that too.
Yeah, and we also have in the technology, and this is not a tech talk. If it was, I'd have somebody else on the call. But we do have the concept of layering in the product. So you can layer language. We have one customer that has 13 languages in their document. So it's a single document with 13 layers of language. And you just push a button. If let's say I'm Spanish speaking, and I'm now in my workstation, I just push the Spanish button and my instructions are all now rendered in Spanish along with the visualization. So there is always a little bit of text that's there, right? And we do have voiceover, the video and the animations and whatnot. So we can do that, right? We do that out of respect for that frontline worker, because our hypothesis is, if you can truly respect the individual, you're going to get so much out of them. Respect them and empower them. The quality will improve because they're happier.
Right. Yeah. So it's not, to your point, it's not a fully model visual, like only those things, but it's about trying to be smart about what you deliver and how you deliver it and leveraging the digital.
That's right. We have a customer that said, look, we want multimedia. We want every kind of data that's out there, right? So video, 3D, 2D, we can deconstruct PowerPoints, we can do vector, raster, we can auto trace 2D drawings, we can bring in 2D drawings. So, the world, we can bring in Word docs, we can bring in tables from Excel. So now you got this single pane of glass where you're creating, to your point, Jonathan, those slices of information that's needed to do the job in any modality that the individual needs to do the job right the first time, ergo improving quality.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, again, fit for purpose, right? That's the idea. Using the assets you have and fit for purpose.
Right. That's right.
So it's interesting. We're talking about people, right? And the value to that frontline worker. There's a piece of what we see going on today when we talk about model-based enterprise, right? And the very model-centric view of things that some organizations have. And I wonder, when we talk about model-based enterprise, do you guys target that at all? Because I understand what you're doing is very focused on the people who need to use digital data, digital product information. So for MBE, a lot of times it's the model is for the human and the model is for the machine. Is there any piece of what you guys do that's targeted toward the machine, or is it all sort of human focused?
It's a great question. So right now, it's human focused because when you're building a company, you have to address pragmatically the market right in front of you so that you can grow the business to have, the strategic vision for the future, right? So, we're pragmatic, right? To the earlier comment Jen made, there's still a lot, and Jonathan, you made it as well. There's still a lot of 2D out there. There's still a lot of screenshot requests. There's still a lot of 30-year-old tech illustration products out there. So, we have to be pragmatic with respect to the technology today. So we address the human. Now, we do have a vision. And the vision, we're really not ready to roll it out yet. You'll hear the vision forthcoming in Q1. But just think about the power of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and I'm not talking about generative AI and creating, I'm really just talking about if we can treat data as data, it's an object, Is there a future where machines can also be advantaged by what we have done with data democratization? Now, I didn't say much there because I'm not disclosing the vision yet. Watch this space. We have some very cool technological advantages in the way we've designed the connected knowledge platform and where we're headed with it. And, I told my team last year, right before the end of the year, we were birthed in the technical illustration application world. That's our genesis, right? We are no longer categorically sitting there. We are over here as a part of an enterprise solution, right? Model-based, okay? Addressing today's needs and then being innovative for tomorrow's needs. So AI will play a role, advancement in our SDKs to getting down to how we handle data models, okay? And then what you can do with the handling of those data models to enable machines.
That's interesting. You've really piqued my interest with that one, Pat, right? That I was sort of expecting the answer to be, well, no, we really are. We're focused on the human, right? We're leveraging the digital assets, but no, there's no intention to target, downstream to machines. So I'm very interested to see. I'll be watching this space to see what's coming.
Because the first step will be a relationship with IoT. That'll be step one.
Interesting.
And we already have prototypes on that. So, I love this podcast because I'm screaming out to the market, come take a look at what we built. You guys are going to want this.
Right.
So it's interesting. You mentioned AI and, without getting into Canvas's plans, et cetera, for the future, just overall in the digitalization space, what impact do you think AI is going to have on digital tools that are available in the future? I mean, not limited to Canvas, but like as a whole.
Yeah. Look, AI has a huge promise of value. Machine learning has a huge promise of value. Its time will come. Okay. I've talked to a lot of AI experts. My family is all AI background, right? My daughter, my son-in-law, my husband was running development for IBM Watson. So there's a lot of AI expertise in this clan. And
Wow, I want to come to family dinner sometime.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. If you want to talk AI, come on over and have a glass of wine. But, we talk
He's
about...
He's close. You have to watch. He's close.
Good, yeah. We do talk about the pragmatics. There will be a role for it to play, just like there'll be a role for XR, right? But it's going to take time. If we really believe that AI can have direct impact today in a mass-produced way, I think that's a little naive because of how it works, right? AI eats data for breakfast, okay? And if you don't have the internet, you may not have enough data to train your algorithms, right? So when you think about, well, can we use generative AI to create a document for a tractor that company A, B, or C has built? That's a small data set. Might have a lot of parts, but they're not going to go out on the internet to pull in data to train their algorithm on how to create the document for that particular tractor, right? So look, I love the concept and the ideas behind artificial intelligence and machine learning. I'm pro, not con, but I'm pragmatic. I'll use that word again. I've been around too long to say, it's going to work tomorrow, right? But it will work eventually in the right applications for the right use cases.
And with the right controls. I agree.
Okay?
Yeah. And when you have the right data set, right? To your point, I think that's a huge one that a lot of companies today are sort of just glossing over. It's like, well, all the AI that we're seeing has been trained on millions and even billions of records on the internet. Well, wait, when I go to use it for my application, do I have a data set that size to train my AI?
That's right. And people forget that. And then the cost of running it, right? It doesn't run on a Mac. The other thing that I found interesting about the whole AI discussion, we all have know TechSoft 3D quite well in Ron. And I was at a conference with Ron and we talked about digital twins and what is a digital twin and adoption of digital twins. If you're going to train an algorithm, a digital twin is a data repository kind of, and I'm saying that in an amateuristic response, and I didn't mean it to be trivializing. It's not. The disparity and the lack of standards and the fact that data is everywhere. Data has to be housed in a data pool, and it ain't yet today, right? So I think going back to the AI conversation, Jonathan, your comment, do you have enough data? And is that data in a place where it can be trained? Yes or no? Right?
Right. Yeah. One of my big arguments about that to that point is engineering is a different space than a lot of places where we see AI being applied today, right? Engineering, when it comes to devices like airplanes and bridges and cars and things where safety is involved, we don't like inferencing.
Yeah.
Inferencing can be kind of dangerous. So, it's the data is also, do you have it structured right? Does it make relationships clear and explicit? Those kinds of things. So yes, I think there's a lot to that. I agree with you.
Yep.
So we've had a really good time talking with you this morning. And I think it's,
Thank you.
And I think we've really covered the gamut of how digitalization is not only changing the way we work, but how also the way we work, to your point regarding the digital loop, can change the way we digitalize things. So basically that digital loop, making sure that information flow is bidirectional. So I really appreciate you taking the time today to talk with us. And
yeah, this has been great, Pat.
Thank you. It's always fun, huh?
And, we always encourage any of our listeners to, if there's anything that you want to comment on, have questions about that we didn't cover, please feel free to reach out, comment on the podcast, ask us questions, etc. We'd be happy to answer. I am sure Pat and her team would be happy to answer.
You bet.
And I just, really appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. And everybody, until next time, stay sharp.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Stay Sharp with Razorleaf. We appreciate you. If you have any questions for our podcast team or have an idea for a new topic for our team to cover in this year, please send an email to podcast@razorleaf.com. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to leave a comment on our post and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, stay sharp.